All right. Yes, we are live. There we go. All right. All of you freedom-loving individuals, no matter where you are on this planet Earth, if you believe in freedom and individual liberties, God-given liberties, welcome to Millstone Self-Reliance Group. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Mark. This other guy over here,
Blake. How you
Blake.
guys doing tonight?
And then we've got a special guest who's joined us tonight, former Snake Eater 18 series. He's been on before. But Clint, why don't you just introduce yourself and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself? They've seen you before, but, never hurts. Just to remind everybody how badass you are. And then talk about George over your shoulder real quickly, too.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks for having me back on again. I love to sit here and talk about these very important subjects. Things that I've been doing for the better part of my adult life. Most of my time in the military, 25 years in the military, almost all of it, unless I was an instructor, was within special operations somewhere, either the Rangers or the Special Forces community. It has a lot to do with, field craft and survival and all those things, weaponry. And where we're going to go into a lot to talk this evening is unconventional warfare. We'll be talking about some of that a little bit. And then, so I did a little bit of time as a reserve law enforcement officer trainer at a training range down here in the Southeast, and been a contractor and just out doing just a mirage of different things, having a good time and trying to better myself, my family, and put us in a good position to be ready for things.
Rock and roll. You want to tell everybody just again, Clint is the founder of Nemesis Camo. So over on my other life, Centerline Systems, when we open up, we're going to have a whole, we're going to start carrying Nemesis. And matter of fact, our third slot of next business day is going to be a bunch of products in Nemesis. But why don't you show off George there just a little bit,
Yeah. So from the last time that I was on, I got George standing over here and was doing some photography. I've got a new uniform that's being introduced right now. These are production uniforms in the Nemesis Woodlands Wolf camouflage pattern. And so I got my mannequin standing here. You can kind of check them out while we're talking this evening or whatever. And, just on that subject real quick, over the weekend was talking to a lot of brand partners, and there hasn't been a lot new that's come out in the camouflage area. There's been some big companies that have been out for about 20 years. And a lot of guys, I feel, and if you stop by the Nemesis Camo page, there's a story about how I developed this camo pattern. And it has a lot to do with legacy patterns to like frog skin, ERDL or Erdl, Woodland, Multicam. Some of the big ones were all designed into this pattern. And there's some attributes with this pattern for manufacturers that has to do with non-directional and great fabrics that are coming out that are available for, you can see on my other side, here's my Centerline system pack. And Mark did this one for me, really nice, tough as nails, heavy duty 1000D Cordura, great pack. So have that out here for you to see with George here. And guess that's really it. If you want to see more about that, you can find it at Nemesis Camo online.
Well, I mean, it's actually a good plug / segue into what we're going to talk about tonight. So tonight's title, just to jump into it, boys and girls, is Blake and I were kind of going back and forth. I really actually was thinking about it over the weekend, and just like everybody else, I'm busy. Blake's busy. We didn't have a whole lot time to talk this weekend. But the whole scheme was, in this last week, and look, this isn't a woe's me. I'm actually very happy. I just got out of a major surgery. I was, last week should have been a recovery week for me. I'm a small business owner, so I'm just trying to work my ass off, and I don't want to take oxycodone, blah, 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 blah. Right. Life sucks for everybody. It's tough and we're all busy. So Blake and I were busy, but, as I was sitting there trying to recover when I could, I just was finally able to look at some news for the first time in about 2 weeks and really actually take the time and read. And I just came away, and then I'm going to turn over to Blake, and then we're going to get Clint in here and get into the heart of it. I made a joke not too long ago, kind of using some World War II, John has a long mustache, the chair's against the wall. But my real takeaway last week, and I know this is going to sound black-pilled. I'm not a black-pilled person, but this is not a black-pilled comment here, but we are in a war. and most of us just don't even realize it, right? So we wanted to talk about the war we're in that we don't think we're in, right? Or however you want to phrase that. But I hate to say it, boys and girls. We kind of talked about this before we started the show, and we're not going to, like, we already did the first 72 hours. We already went over, shoot, move, food, fire, water, shelter, shoot, move, communicate. There's really no time right at the moment in the next 30 days to kind of go over that. You either are going to get it or you're not going to get it. I think, Blake, correct me if I'm wrong, as I turn this over to you, this is really just acknowledging the fact that we are already in a war, and with Clint's background, my background, Blake as just a new father's perspective, we're going to sit and talk about some of those key identifiers that you think we're just clickbaiting it, you think we're full of shit. You do you, brother, but we're going to sit and talk about that a little bit. Blake, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can. As the title says, the war we're already in. I've always been a student of history. I love history. The older, the better, but I'm fascinated by every aspect of it. And one of the things I've been seeing a lot going around recently, and there's a very strong argument for it, is that future historians will likely say that World War III broke out in 2020. There's a multitude of reasons why. Now, I think it's starting to come to a head. We talked about a watershed moment last week when Blackbeard and Redbeard were on. And, if you look in the totality of the events that have happened since end of 2019 to 2020, we had the coup. After that, we had incredible turmoil inside the United States and the Western world at large. Then moving into the conflict in Ukraine with Russia, that's now boiled into a multi-year multi-year war that is threatening to expand into a greater theater. We have the absolute just chaos that happened inside of our internal government and is still going on. And right now, during all of these extreme moments, our former commander-in-chief has had multiple assassination attempts, and we don't actually have a sitting commander-in-chief right now. Then you look at what's going on in the Middle East. The Levant is on fire and is going to continue going on fire. So if I'm looking at this in a long view, 100 years from now as a historian, I'm going to look at the breakout of the disease known as COVID-19 in the end of 2019 during the Wuhan Games Military Game Festival, and I'm going to pinpoint that as the beginning of World War III. We're just now getting into the hot stage, and we've left out a tremendous amount of things. I mean, we had fighter pilots crashing in Michigan, and no one talked about it the same night while we had one of our power plants blew up. Previous to that, we had a data center explode with CCTV that looks like something that came from the sky. We've had American citizens on our own soil get taken out for things that they've said recently. I mean, this is just scratching the surface. This doesn't have anything to do with the
key attacks on infrastructure. We couldn't have planned that any better, because that's what Clint and I are going to talk about, the unconventional warfare aspects of it.
And that's what we're in.
Yeah, but you're just nailing it. And as you said, you probably can even write it all down on one side of one piece of paper.
Dude.
Like, the list is so effing long.
How many?
But it is coming to a boiling point now. Well, here, I'll just shut up and turn it back over to you, and then let's get Clint in the fight. But I just want to simply say, for anybody, and because censorship, you didn't really mention censorship, YouTube, all of this is real. And, very few people will ever see this video, but I will go down in posterity between, and I'll stand in front of my God and I'll say, hey, I at least was out there doing something. I noticed Yoda says, do or do not. Well, I don't have the power to change all this right now. I can just try the best I can try, right? And do the best I can do.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is we're coming to a nexus point, a confluence. It's the writing's on the wall, and it's only going to keep getting worse. And I think, if you come from a perspective of whether you're a historian, whether you're in these situations firsthand, whether you're a new father like myself, it doesn't really matter too much. I think anyone that has eyes to see right now can see we are at an epoch, a changing of an age, and I think you best act accordingly. And that's why we've covered what we have as quickly as we can, and it's kind of all been crash course, but it's got to be crash course right now, because, man, you're locked into your jumpsuit right now. It's time. So,
Clint, respond or go in a different direction where you want to go to that, sir?
No, I mean, you're just nailing it. You're just hitting it. You're just nailing the button. Every point that you just made, I couldn't agree more. And it's debatable. We've seen the Butler shooting. We've seen the Trump airplane make an emergency landing. We've seen the second thing down in Florida. We saw in Tucson now that there could have very possibly been some kind of a chemical attack. People getting sick in the crowd, multiple people. I've heard reports of people losing their eyesight. I mean, it's incredible what's going on right now. How bad, and we're all seeing it, how bad the swamp is fighting this. And I learned a new term this week that I hadn't used before, makes complete sense, the blob. And when you start talking about the blob, the swamp and the censorship that is going on, getting rid of the First Amendment, stopping your ability to be able to logically debate anything that's against the narrative. Where they deplatform, censor with advertising money, so you can't get out and say anything, with just straight up algorithm censoring online. So anybody that enjoys their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and wants to be left alone. We're getting to that point where people are joking about when you finally piss off the quiet people, the ones that want to be left alone. We've been there, but it's becoming daily more apparent. And like Blake, we saw his baby here right before we got on. I've got a 10-year-old daughter. I started late with my kids towards the end of my military career. So I still have a young daughter. And I've just, as I've gotten older, my age right now, the only thing that makes you completely selfless is having children. The game changes when you have children. It's not about you anymore.
And that's another arena in which evil has played a very good game, because now you got people who are demonizing those individuals who have family values or who have families. The whole notion of family, husband, wife, man, woman, sons and daughters, that is being stripped away. And if you speak out against it, you are labeled as the others. And Clint, I want to bring this over to you, because from a PSYOPs perspective, and that's what we have going on. Again, this is all part of something Clint and I were talking about the other day from an unconventional warfare perspective, but psychological operations, or PSYOPs, are a huge part of that. And so is language. I mean, everybody, look at Cloward Piven. I'm not saying anything new to people who are probably watching this podcast, but if you don't know what we're talking about, you better get smart on this quickly, because everything Clint just said, tying into what Blake was saying earlier, it's all part of a deconstruction effort. And by doing that, and now here's where I'm not saying I disagree with what Blake and Clint just said, but I'll throw my 2 cents in. I think there's going to be about 60% of the population, boys, who are just going to roll with it. They can see what you just said, Clint, or what you're getting to, Blake, and they're just still going to roll with it. So that's and I see that happening right now amongst our media, our politicians, other social groups here. I'm on the record saying this for years now. I used to support like liberal movements and people that were my family members who were quote unquote liberal, but that was the classic traditional liberal, I think, use of it. Where are all those people fighting against mutilating children or women or men and women's sports? They're nowhere to be seen. So, and Clint and I were kind of talking about this in a slightly different arena. I'll just throw it out there because we'll get back to it. And then I just want to shut up and let these guys talk. But if you think law enforcement or the military is on your side, these programs have been going on for a long time, as Blake said, and they being evil, in my perspective, has no choice but to go 100% all in right now. And even if we win come in November, it still isn't game over. So that's if we win. Yeah. Now, if I've said anything that gets you guys to want to chime in, go ahead there, brothers.
Well, I do want to say one quick thing here, and that's going back to the family. So one of the reasons that the family nucleus has to be broken up, destroyed, and controlled is, well, there's actually a few reasons. The state needs to have ownership of those children. If the state is to perpetuate, because the state itself does not have sexual organs. It cannot reproduce. It has to take these things. So one of the big goals there is to try to indoctrinate children from the young age. I mean, George Orwell, say what you will about the individual, his book 1984 really touched on this, when, I mean, the children were actually turning in their parents. Well, where did we see that in history? We saw that in places like Soviet Russia, say with a little accent, why not? Places like Germany. I mean, when the state gets too powerful, the children are a very potent weapon. And other
right there, before you go any further, just a quick little side note. If somebody thinks that we're full of shit and we're just like, clickbaiting it, New Hampshire just passed a thing. They are trespassing parents who show up wearing like an XX badge. That, they're showing up to try to support their daughters in female sports. And those people are now being banned from school, banned from the sporting event. So that's what Blake's point is. So if you think we're making this shit up, they aren't even hiding anymore. Now, if you don't believe in the new thing, you're banned. And we're using the power of the state, which behind the power of the state is force, is violence. They're using that against their own citizens right now. And it is all in. Sorry, continue.
No, you're right. The other thing is too about breaking up the family nucleus is it's rearing offspring to have individualist but yet still liberty-based motives behind them, bringing them up like the founders intended. The civics-minded student of history, that's one of the greatest threats to the power structure. And you can't let parents do that. You can't have stewards of the next generation. If they want to try to use these potent weapons to make them weaponized, you can't have that other influence. So children are, I mean, it's the future. It really is what it all comes down to, because this isn't, I don't think this is like what we saw in history with World War I and World War II, where World War I was the old empires clashing, and we don't need to get into a huge diatribe as to why, because we'll be here talking for days. World War II was another entire geopolitical monster that we can talk about for days, but it's beside the point. World War III, if we're going to use this nomenclature, this is a different conflict. This is playing for keeps. This isn't like they said the war to end all wars from the first one. This is a true global one, and it's very vested interests that want to try to institute a power structure that can last for generations and be out in the open about it, where for a long time they've been in the shadows. So this is a different monster, and that's why we've seen such a multi-pronged attack, where it's been the psychological operations, it's been the attack on your children, it's been the attack in the general communities and breaking those communities apart and fracturing us, because we've never been closer because of these things, but in the same breath, we've never been further away because we don't communicate anymore. So this is a multi-pronged totalitarian attack that people need to see it for what it is, and it's an all-encompassing beast.
Before I turn it over to Clint, I'm just going to, again, go on the record. I called this over a month ago. We're already in that. We didn't even make it to the end of September, which is, I think, what I said. And if you disagree with me, disagree with me. Best of luck to you. I hope you're right. Only one of us can be, and I hope it's you. But I don't think that's the case. And I'm going to bring it over to Clint because, one of the last things that Blake was just talking about, Clint, I don't know if you want to go in this direction or a different one, but a lot of people may not be familiar with psychological operations and what that looks like. You are, I am, other men and women are, who've been in the GWAT for the last, fucking forever and a day, right? The forever wars. But do you want to address that, or do you want to go in a different direction, Clint?
Man, I'll tell you what, when they say drinking from a fire hose, man, when I get on here, I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose because my mind's going in so many different, it's hard to get my mind on one thing. But, what Blake was just talking about, education, man, is so important for our children, and they're basically in charge of it. The public school has a grip on the kids, but I'll tell you what, I'm a product of the public school system. So, I mean, it's kind of, you got to get away from that. And one thing that I like seeing, you have to be knowledgeable about what you're talking about, because you have to argue intelligently about these subjects. You have to know what's going on. You cannot be one of the cattle chewing their cud, wandering around in the field with each other. You have to watch and be logical and understand these geopolitical problems that are going on. And I think I said this on one of our other episodes. I was talking about, while I was still in the special forces, they were very specific about us not speculating on stuff. When we knew, because we spent a lot of time downrange in these countries, We saw China over in Africa building dams and infrastructure, and we were watching it because we were competitors on the ground, so we were being able to see things that are going on overseas that most people aren't, they're not exposed to. So, I mean, you got to be educated, and people like, and I really enjoy watching people like Charlie Kirk. When he gets out there and starts arguing with somebody, he leaves them speechless because he is knowledgeable about what he's talking about, and he leaves them walking away going, man, don't I feel like a dumbass? Because he led me right into a corner, and I had no answer, because he was right. So being measured in your delivery and how you talk to people and being educated about these subjects is number one. You got to know what you're talking about, because if you're one of those people that are quoting some things and you're not watching what's going on, or you're just standing there as a spectator because you're not involved in a position. One last thing, and like I said, there's so many things when Blake's talking and Mark's talking, I'm thinking about things. I'm in a heavily Democratic county down here by Fort Benning. And I'll tell you what, it's usually Democratic here, but I drive around right now and am actually put on my heels of all the Trump's Pence signs. It's overwhelming. You drive up and down the streets all over here in town, and they're everywhere. And it's almost like the people are making it apparent, and they're putting signs in the yards. I go down some neighborhood yards, and they're in every yard. I've never seen anything like it. So, and that is how scared they are of Trump getting back in there, Vance getting back in there. I saw last thing, Mark. I saw one thing, and about being educated about this stuff. I saw a screenshot today, or a snapshot of Kamala Harris at some event, and she was chanting, about being against deportation, but for education. And that goes exactly into what Blake was saying. Yeah, they want to educate people. They want to educate them their way.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, and that's the thing. I want to go back to one of the things you said. Language really is the best tool in our arsenal. And to hone your word as best as you can to be the sharpest sword you can will be your most efficient tool that you have. Because the thing is when you're having conversations with people, you're not necessarily trying to change the person you're debating's mind, because their mind's pretty solidified. It's everybody else that might be listening, watching, seeing. All right. Now, I know we're a little late in the game to try to change minds, but we do need to use the best tool in our box. And that's another thing. I don't want to bring up 1984 too much, but I just reread it again recently. And the Newspeak Dictionary is kind of one of the big core concepts behind that world. And that's the reduction of language, so that we can get to a point where language can be so dumbed down that we can't articulate what our emotions are. So instead of saying something is excellent, we say it's double plus good. And in the book, I think they were on like the 13th iteration of the Newspeak Dictionary, because if you don't possess the words to actually convey the concepts you're trying to understand, eventually those concepts will become so foreign to you, your mind can't even process them. And we've seen that in the dumbing down of the language and the attempt at the certain education systems. I don't want to harp on the education system so much, but it really is where one of the major battlefields right now are.
Well, it's not a bad rabbit hole to go down, or a side story. But, kind of bringing it back over to Clint and, his, pedigree and background and experience, that's just another form. Again, conspiracies aren't these grand things, the three of us and with all these plans. Often enough, we all know what we're doing. And it's a wink, wink, nod, nod, because we all are reading out of the newest dictionary that Blake's talking about. But then, kind of going to what we're talking about, it's controlling who gets to speak and what words get to be spoken. What is it that the majority of people, to Blake's point, because you're not going to convince me with 2 + 2 equals potato, but your argument, if you do it correctly from a psychological operations perspective, a UW unconventional warfare perspective, you can start convincing people like, oh yeah, 2 + 2 is potato. And then, so that's just one of the tracks that you'll take for your form of warfare at this level, what we're trying to do. And then the other one is to make sure that you isolate, segregate, you segregate Mark and Blake so they can't talk to each other. And then you isolate them so no one else can talk to them as well. Patrick, or I'm sorry, Clint, is that a good spot to go into for you, or do you want to roll with that, or do you want to go somewhere else?
That's exactly right. And when you start talking about the war and censorship, the First Amendment right now that's going on, I mean, it's terrifying to watch what's going on in England right now. If you say something against, you say the right word, and the police show up at your house and start questioning you, and they're you see it here. Some will say, hey, what's your badge number? What's your name? I want to see your credentials. There are still some controls on that. Over there, they don't have to say anything. They just come up and say, we saw you said something on the internet. We're putting the handcuffs on you, get in the car. I mean, they're past the decisive point.
Yeah.
They've got to the point where they have no tools in the toolbox anymore. And we have to, there was some footage that I saw just recently where some FBI people showed up. Probably a lot of people saw it. And the first thing guy said, I don't want to see your badge. I want to see your ID. You don't come up here and start talking to me, and telling me I did something wrong when you won't even identify yourself. And that is my right, to due process, to know who you are, what the charges are, why are you talking to me, or I'm going back in the house.
Now, I don't want to maybe necessarily go down too far down this rabbit hole, but what a great example, because so if people think, if you think this is clickbait, you do you, but it is already the reality in other countries, Western countries. And it is almost the reality here in America, where we have a constitution that says otherwise. And you'd be like, well, what's your proof? I'm like, I don't know, just spend, and even on YouTube, ScrewTube, which censors everything, there are so many auditor videos. If cops in America were someone that you could really trust, if we could really look to the blue and say, like I've heard people say, I'll support the blue when they support you. I didn't really think that way, but now I'm starting to kind of see it, because all I keep seeing is, to Clint's point, even America, we have so many jackbooted, authoritarian-minded individuals. They know, and they don't care. They're like, yeah, well, sue us. We'll see, because they're not going to lose their jobs. And the money for the lawsuit, that's just taxpayer dollars, right? So who gives a shit? But most of you aren't going to stand up against me. You're not going to win in a court of law where things are skewed. It's only like the egregious ones, but I hate to say it, I see too many of these videos, and I'm just like, how in the fuck is that person a cop in America? I don't even get it. And to the point where we're getting at, and I hope I didn't take us too far down a little bit of a diatribe. If you think you're going to trust those people when push comes to shove here in the next potentially 30 days, I got a bridge to nowhere I'm willing to sell you right now.
Well, I actually want to highlight something you just said, because it brings up another facet of what this is, and that's the courts. So beyond the individuals on the streets, what happens in the courts? There's very much so two distinct different courts. There's their courts and there's our courts. And in our courts, anything can happen. It's a banana republic. It's a complete kangaroo court situation we can see happen on multiple different levels. Now, I don't want to say that all the courts are that screwed up, but it is another facet of this combat that's taking place inside of our systems. And it's a divergence between what we once were, a true republic, to what we are now moving towards. And this is why, again, if it's the war we are already in, or we don't think we're in, it's more than just World War III, or more than just, the Civil War, or whatever you want to term it as. This is really a whole different beast that hasn't been seen in our lifetime, or really in any recorded history lifetime. It's very technocratically based, and it's all encompassing, and it's not necessarily going to be done kinetically. Maybe at once it will be, and maybe it's only for a little while, but it's a way different kind of beast. Now,
interesting, Blake, on that subject, man. We're past that point. We're Moses and the Red Sea's parting. Just to what you just talked about, it is so hard to find real biased. There's almost no bias anymore. You're either on this side or you're on that side, and you got to be weary when you start venturing into that, where you're in that territory, like the courts. And depending on what county you're in, what state you're in, you start going towards one of those sides, because you're getting, deep into enemy territory. If you're in a heavily, Democratic area, what we're doing right now, sitting on here talking about the problems, could get you tossed in jail in Europe right now.
Yeah.
With no due process. You're going, get the bracelets on, let's go. because
yeah, we don't even, you're absolutely right. Here, we would maybe be lucky like that guy, and somebody just knocks on your door and you say, prove who you are. And I haven't committed a crime, so piss off like that. And I saw that video. Good on that individual, by the way. But that kind of unfortunately goes to my point. We see entirely too many of these videos nowadays. So I just want to reiterate. So if you think, and look, and if you're law enforcement or military, prove me wrong. I don't mind being wrong. I used to be in the military. I used to be in the CIA. Don't lump me in with those fuckers. I mean, and I don't want to lump you in either. But unfortunately, look, I'm not proud of saying I was so proud of the work I did in the agency, me individually, but I am not proud of saying I used to work there when you look at everything that's going on in that organization now. So, and I'm just throwing that out there, not a woe is me or look at me, but it's the same for law enforcement, same for the military. Each and every one of us are going to have to look ourselves in the mirror and make a hard decision here, in my humble opinion, in the next 30 days, to Clint's point right there.
That's right. And having a little bit of law enforcement background, I've got to see that side. And it's very partisan. I've had this discussion so many times when people say, well, do you think they're going to start going to house and start taking our guns away? The law enforcement? If we get to that point, the military, the UN, who do you think is going to start going house to house? But the thing is everything will fracture down the center. There'll be two militaries. There'll be two law enforcements because you have the left and the right, so there's a very small center, moderate center, of anybody that's thinking logically. You're either hard left or hard right, and they're driving the wedge further and further in that gap.
But is that not one of the weapons?
That is
one of the goals, right? It's the expanding the sides and creating those two camps, or I would argue even more camps, but it's two main dividing camps, and making you pick a side. And then if you're in the middle, if you try to look at things logically and go, hey, what is that 10,000 foot view? Then you are almost worse than the other, because you're not willing to pick a side, so that they really put people that try to have a more centrist view or try to look at things logically in a very, very difficult position. And most people are going to fold to that pressure, pick a camp that they align more closely to, because it's easier to go along to get along.
Yeah. Allow me to stomp on one of the red buttons real quick and go off on a different direction and pull me back in if you have to. But, the left's, their big topic is abortion. And as a 55-year-old heterosexual family-oriented kids, I sit here and look at this, and the argument is they're going to take away their ability to have an abortion. And I'm like, I don't really support that. But I mean, you're a grown adult. Why should you even have to worry about that? If you're not planning on having kids, don't do it. And I mean, don't get pregnant, then you won't even have that argument. And they haven't taken anything away. The states can still do it. You want to live in California, you get California. You want to live in Montana, you're going to get Montana. So there's nothing that they've taken away, but they're using that as a dog whistle? Oh my gosh, and they're looking at this one topic when there's such bigger other topics, inflation, World War III, I mean, vaccines, stuff like that. That's like, okay, this is to me, my opinion, small fries compared to the bigger things. And this is what you're harping on.
And Blake, before you respond, just let me add to Clint's, because I've actually had that almost exact same conversation with people in the last couple of years. And my only response is like, is this really what we're talking about? This is the hill you're going to plant your flag on? It's like, there's other options. I don't know, abstinence, sexual protection, wearing protection, the pill, there's other things. There's even adoption. So we're just going to jump past all the things of you being an adult and being, responsible, and just going into automatically now we're having a debate whether or not you think you're killing it. You don't think you're killing a human. I think you're killing a human. But we just skipped over all the other fucking steps you could have done as an adult before we even got to this conversation. So Clint, high five on you for fucking going down, because that's always been my thing. Like, well, let's save that conversation for the bitter end. It's the bitter end, right?
Yeah, I'm going to force dump this ball off to Blake real quick. I don't want them sticking a experimental vaccine in me and I ain't going to let them make decisions for my reproductive rights because I'm an adult and I'm going to make that decision on my own. I don't need them telling me, what my wife is going to do or what I'm going to do or my children are going to do. That's my business.
And whatever that decision is, that's also then a decision between you and your healthcare provider or your insurance or however you're going to deal with that shit. Yep. That doesn't come out of my pocketbook or yours or Blake's. That's how that works. Yep. I agree with you right there.
So
Blake, I know you had something to add to something here.
Yeah, no, I'm going to probably be even more controversial here. Take this one step.
Do it, because we might not be around 30 days from now.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of I'm like, apparently this is like we're pulling out the hat tricks in this one. So, all right, whatever. I'm going to take it one step further and say that abortion, the reason it's a hill they're willing to die on is because it's one of the big indicators of a collapsing nation. And it's one of the big things that happens when you have a foreign or a foreign body, not necessarily the sense of foreigners, but a foreign body that's taking over the host, that, they want to eliminate the future generations. And if we look at places like Macedonia, Carthage, Babylon, the Aztecs, we look at these massive empires that all practiced ritualistic sacrifice.
Yeah.
And then you look at the absolute mechanical and industrial scale of abortion inside the United States. Go look at the headquarters of Planned Parenthood and tell me if that doesn't look kind of like an Aztec pyramid. It's pretty interesting that, you look into the economy that's been set up on selling these murdered children's body parts. And I mean, you can't tell me that this isn't pure evil, like incarnate. Like these are the things that our ancestors would have talked about as being demonic, truly in body and form. And
just right there, just right there for just the record, not to make this into an abortion argument but look, if there is something, if you could say medically, scientifically, medically, however you want to phrase that there are some incredible health benefits that we could take from stem cells or something like that, then let's have as Clint just said, well, we're adults. Let's have an adult conversation. We don't go out of our way harvesting that so some other business and corporation can make billions of dollars.
And you can get your third Ferrari because we have that on film. Yeah. I mean, like there are going
to be plenty of other medical situations in which we can still reap the scientific rewards.
Yeah.
And we do that without selling our soul to the devil, which
yeah. Throw that all away. Just look at the history side of things. You want to kill a nation, you kill its children. And you really control that population. So why not? I'll go the other controversial side. It's not just abortion. It's genital mutilation and pushing the trans agenda. Oh, that one's going to really get us in trouble. It's the literally pushing into the camps of the multiplicity.
Well, hang on. Before you do that, I think that only gets us in trouble because reality, that's the same thing as saying breaking down the family, breaking down gender roles. It's just another vein of attack in that larger battle that they're trying to conduct, which is breaking down that language so you don't even know, again, it's 1984 shit, again.
It's drugging your children on multiple different antipsychosis or psychotic drugs, supposedly, because they're on the spectrum or they have a little bit of issues with it. I mean, at the end of the day, when you reduce all of this, okay, or like, when they came up to my wife after we had our first child and they went, hey, you want to get an ablation right now? I mean, we're already in there. You do not want to have another kid. Like, it's all population control, all of it. If you boil it down to the simplest thing across the board, it's all get rid of the next generation so we can replace it with what we want, what we tailored, what we desire.
Well, before you just going too far, not to go too far afield, because I think what you just said has a UW element to it, and I want to bring it back over to Clint because that is psyops from the unconventional warfare side of it. And what you take it all the way back to Sun Tzu, however you want to fucking phrase it, it's just a new form of combat that you pop that up? That was too
I did. I had to. I was chuckling about
I was saving that. We never read ones, but I was going to read that because it was too funny.
It's great.
Hey, only one of us quarterbacks that, damn it.
All right, fair enough.
But over to Clint, because again, that's part of the psyops, the UW is if I can convince you that you don't know that 2 + 2, or if I can convince you that 2 + 2 = potato, what else am I going to convince you of being able to, you're willing to do for me, or you're willing to turn a blind eye towards, because even you not taking active measures is you still supporting my cause from a UW's perspective. Clint?
Yeah, and I like that the comment that you popped up from the person from UK, like having them on here listening and them commenting, because we've been seeing this for a while. It's the frog in the boiling water theory, and we've been hearing this from people in Australia. We've hearing this from people in Europe. They're like, don't let them, take away the Second Amendment, because you got to have that to have a free society. I'm a 2A guy, of course. And, we've got to protect the rest of the Constitution. And with that is the only way. And when these people sit there and say that, the agenda that they're pushing, but we're seeing this stuff happen in Australia. We're seeing it happen in Europe, and we're getting to that decisive point, and it's anguishing watching it, because we're getting closer and closer. And I'm talking about a decisive point of violence, because we're already in it. They're already trying to take our inalienable rights away. All these things that we're discussing: freedom of speech, firearms, authority over our own bodies, reproduction, education. These are big things, and we're coming to a collision point right now, and we're in it. But it's how long it's going to take for them to really push everything to the edge. I was just watching this thing up there in Philadelphia, or whatever it was, Pennsylvania, where the people are all over the police car, and they're out there doing acting like there's no laws anymore,
Yep.
and they're just going crazy, and that chaos that's going on there, that it's being allowed to happen. I don't know. I guess jump in there. I kind of lost my thought there, but
I'll just respond to that before I bring it over to Blake, because again, if I was evil, I wouldn't be just putting my eggs in one basket. I would be working on multiple fronts. And to what Clint just said, and I'm going to tie that into my previous comment about, can you trust law enforcement in America today? Well, the answer is no, but it's not just that because all law enforcement's bad. I don't mean it that way. Think of what Clint just said. If you've been told to stand down, or you get yelled at by your chief when you arrest somebody who's doing something obviously illegal, but that doesn't fit the narrative, how long does that take before it so destroys your morale? And then you start lashing out, because remember, cops are just people. We're all human beings. And how many of you have been so frustrated about something at work or something else in your life that you've lashed out and taken it out on other innocent people? You don't think that fucking happens? I'm a cop. I'm supposed to be upholding the law, but I can't do anything against these people. So Blake just pissed me off because he didn't use a turn signal. Next thing you know, I'm throwing him cuffs over a goddamn traffic violation. Mm-hmm. So the strategy is succeeding. It's winning. It just is. I mean, I don't know if that helps you get back on track there, Clint.
You just brought me back into focus, and I was watching this morning as I was frying up my breakfast. I'm usually up pretty early doing my thing and make my breakfast, and it's quiet, catching a little bit of news this morning. And I heard a reporter talking about this incident that's happening up there with the chaos in, Philadelphia. And she was basically trying to implicate the law enforcement that they were involved in it, that they were actually doing something, but she really narrowed it down to is they're not doing anything. And I just sat there and said, wow, you don't want them to do anything, because one, their jobs are on the line. If they step in and try to do something, you're going to have to call a whole lot more than one cruiser that's being jumped on by 1,000 people. And then you expect them to do something and put their neck out, and then when they do, they're in trouble. Now what? So if you have made law enforcement, you have put them in a lose-lose situation. They can't do their job, and when they do their job, I'm telling you, that's why I'm not there anymore. I mean, they're in a lose-lose situation, just like we're in with the coming up on this election. We're at an inflection point. We've got a cross in the road. We either go Trump to the right, and then he's got to get in there and clean this mess up and start deporting people that are not supposed to be here. They're here illegally, and come in the right way. And let me tell you, my wife came here, we went through the whole process. She's an immigrant, came here, went through the process, and she legalized. We did it all, the legal way. So, I have an axe to grind with that. If I have to do it the right way, these people have to do it the right way.
Amen.
So we went through that entire process, but it's all breaking down. The whole system, they want it all to break. They don't want the law enforcement to be able to do anything. They want biased judges. They want attorneys that, they're just out there. They don't really care what the fight is. They're just getting, rich off of these problems. Back to what Blake was saying. I mean, we got a pharmaceutical industry that's making everybody sick. It was historic for me to sit there and watch RFK Jr. partner up with Trump. I was blown away by that because it was truly historic.
But if we still had a real media, Clint, it would have been historic if we had a real media.
Right, exactly.
If the real media would have reported that, but they didn't do that. No,
they did it no service, because we've got Tulsi Gabbard on the team, former Democrat, now changed parties, RFK Jr. in there with Trump. So we're really getting a fairly diverse administration from that side that's really wanting to get in and fix some problems, man. And the pharmaceutical, big industry, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they're all terrified.
And then before I bring it over to you, Blake, so I just want to highlight that because, we're 40 some minutes into it, but Clint just brought us all the way back to the beginning. This is why on a personal level, this is just me. I'm not speaking for anybody else. It's too late. You've got 30 days. Very seriously look between now and the election, get your final preps in, and then, and even it doesn't matter who wins. There's going to be trouble. It's just going to depends on who wins, what type of trouble and how much we're going to have. But this is not going to be, this is going to suck. And then to what Clint just said, bringing it over to Blake, we're in big trouble. Matter of fact, Big Trouble, Little China. Maybe I'll watch that tonight. Just to have some humor. Yes. But we're in big fucking trouble because to Clint's point, that was historic, Clint. Unbelievable. And he's been so honest, and you don't have to like the guy or not, but that is true unity. That is bridging of some gaps. You got Elon Musk, you got all these other figures, Ramaswamy, you got all these people coming together, and that's just fucking cricket. No one talks about it. So to your point, they're scared. And so what does a scared animal do when backed into a corner? Usually something really fucking stupid, boys and girls.
Well, Blake? I mean, we just saw some assassination attempts. We've seen the attempts to kick off multiple wars all around the globe. Like, if we're to believe that this is, I don't want to say one all-encompassing group, because it's not. It's multiple vested interests, multiple different factions, all fighting for the big pile of loot. But they're all pushing the ball in the same direction. And to bring up one more interesting point is we saw another Epstein-esque blackmail network now in the news and getting closed down. So, in the last 25 years across the Western world, we've seen probably about 15 of these major blackmail networks that have been exposed and shown that, there are high-level individuals in our politics, in our entertainment, our media, that are involved in extremely unspeakable crimes, and they all have mutual blackmail on one another. And if we've seen these 10 to 15, it's actually more than that, but let's just stay on the conservative side, over the last 25 years, networks like this that have been exposed, it's safe to say there's probably 10 to every one of those that are still operating. So it's probably a safe assessment that most of the hierarchy of the world, at least in the Western world, are compromised and compromise each other equally, which means they can continue pushing the ball forward to try to get this goal. And eventually one of them, they think they can sit on top of the entire pile. And they'd also probably rather bring the entire globe down than give up their secrets and give up their power. And again, that's why I kind of keep harping on this. This is a different conflict. World War III is not the right term. Civil War is not the right term. I mean, Global War I kind of maybe fits the bill, but even that doesn't do justice of what we're all facing down the barrel.
I just realized, because I was thinking as you were talking, and I wanted to bring over to Clint for coin, counterinsurgency, UW, and kind of talk more the kinetic side. But then you kind of went like, but this isn't World War II. And so I actually think, and if you look at World War I, that was the first major industrial war, and that caught everybody off. No one knew how to predict that, right? Yeah. I think you're onto something right there. I think this unconventional warfare, psyops, all these other arenas in which the war is being fought, and I'm here to tell you, in my humble, there's no doubt The war has been declared. It was a Cold War 3 years ago. It is definitely a fucking hot war right now. But I don't know if you respond. I think you nailed it right there. This is World War I. It's a good example because we never had industrial warfare on that level ever before. And it was never on a global level. And then Clint, I don't know if you want to add to that from your experience and your perspective as well, but Blake, respond to that because that was a good point.
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes, I don't remember who said it, but World War I, we rode in on horseback and we flew out in the biplane. All right. There was probably 100 years of technological advancement that took place in the years of the Great War. And we thought that was it. It was so bad. It was so terrible.
It was the war to end all wars.
Then
the Great War was the war to end all wars.
Yep. Then World War II came around and said, guess what, bucko? We got a firmware update. Civilians are in the list, and we're going to bomb all of them.
Don't make me laugh. That hurts.
Sorry.
Make me laugh. I don't want firmware updates. Not yet. Don't
World War II was now civilians are on the battlefield. And what this war is now, it's the new technological age, and every single human on Earth is a potential platform. It's a potential receiver. It's a potential something. And if you want to say this is the one that I'll probably be called a schizo for, but this is what I think is honestly happening. It's not a war of nations. It's a war of species. We have one emerging species right now, and that's going to be the techno-sapien. Those that are trying to integrate themselves with artificial intelligence, trying to integrate themselves with the next world technologies, these disruptive things that they're developing so that they can try to live beyond that of a human lifespan. And the rest of us that are just pure humans. I honestly think it's going to ultimately, if this lasts generationally, it's Homo sapiens versus techno sapiens.
The only place I'm going to agree with that, but I want to come back to Clint is that's the 1% of 1% crust.
That's the crazy outcome.
However, but by controlling humanity, I mean, that is power, right? You know, whether you want to put a dollar amount to it or being able to 1% of 1% of us have this new, what Blake just described. Yep. So, I guess, I can't argue it because maybe the things that we're seeing unfurl in front of us are the bullshit, bread and games type of stuff to keep us preoccupied while the real agenda is being executed.
The green versus the blue.
Yeah.
No.
Clint?
Oh, wow. Blake, I mean, that's a great synopsis. I like it, and that's kind of, we're all in that position right now where we feel this icy grip around us, and we all know what's going on, and it's being driven by the World Economic Forum, the United Nations. I mean, when you start looking at NATO and where this, oh my gosh, these subjects are huge. But yeah, Blake, I'm following you with that. We all have that feeling right now. It's like, where is this coming from?
Right around the corner.
Where is it coming from? How are we being smashed here with our God-given liberties, and the freedom of speech and them shutting people up. And, people are just starting to feel like a commodity, and that's all we are, bought and paid for. And we're watching our leaders fall to this. And, it's refreshing. And people right now in this country are looking at Trump going, that's our last hope right there for at least a controlled crash.
Yep.
Because it's not going to stop. It ain't going to stop in 4 years. Then who's the next in the administration? Who's going to take over next? How much more power are they going to implement? Because we're going to get a replay if Trump gets in there of 2016 to the end of his administration. We get to live that again. So, the whole biased media all against him constantly, just trying to slow anything down that he does to try to fix anything. So, I mean, I have this ominous feeling it's going to change. We're going to be up against this. We keep going back to this. We're in the fight now. It is being changed right now. Keep your hands and feet inside the ride until it comes to a complete stop, because we're there. We're already being changed. And, it's hard to not notice it and feel like you're getting choked.
The only thing I can add to that, I mean, well done. And I'm not saying this to say, hey, look, Clint's agreeing with me, but I feel like you really kind of summed up a lot of my feelings and my thoughts. I mean, that's it right there. That's how I feel. Like, maybe that was a more eloquent way of saying it. We're in the middle. We're in the churn. Like Blake and I, TV series we like, but that's a phrase from it. But like, you're always in the churn, but like the churn's really been spooled up. And what Clint just said right there's, and that's my sentiment, I guess. Now shut up. There's no escaping this right now, boys and girls. Even 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, there was maybe still a sense of maybe there's some hope, and maybe this is all just, pontification and, and mental masturbation and, the sky's falling shit. I personally don't feel that anymore after last week. And, again, we could sit and talk for 3 hours and I could give you evidence after evidence, but that's not going to make a difference if you don't want to see it. I mean, the DOJ just came out and said, and said there are hit teams trying to kill a presidential candidate, and here's what they're paying for a bounty. Roof saying this, and like, I mean, you could. What is that? A slip? You think they just inadvertently did that, or that is? Well, that's freedom of information, Mark. I thought you wanted First Amendment stuff. If you really think that's what's going on, again, I got a bridge to nowhere. I'm willing to sell you right now because I need some more money for my preps in the next 30 days. So I'll sell you a bridge. But fellas,
right, Mark, and I mean, we need to stay in the good fight. Be smart, be educated, speak intelligently, speak measured, and stay on the good fight, because this is not going anywhere. We have to keep the water against the rock. We've got to wear it down. It's the only thing that we can do, because there is absolutely no doubt in my mind, my family's mind, that we're in a good versus evil. This positive negative energy. I mean, it's all around us, and you have to be the one that is taking care of yours, taking care of your tribe, your people, yourself, your family, and be doing positive things. Try to turn it.
Hey, as I turn this over to Blake, and I'm going to come back to you one last time, Clint, we're almost at an hour, but if we go a little bit long, but to Clint's point, I want everybody to think of what he just said and work within the realms of the laws within your country, right?
Yep.
When America went to war with England, in our revolution, we didn't fire the first shot. And I hate to say it this way. Yeah, this is like a bad bar fight, and you're going to have to take the first punch, because the enemy wants you to do something stupid. They want to set you up and use that I have a right to defend myself against you. That is the game we're being played right now. Find look, if somebody's kicking in your door and they're trying to kill you, I mean, obviously you have every right to defend yourself. I'm simply saying, don't fall for the bullshit. Look at, the people trying to encourage you to go and do something stupid. That's to Blake's point. That, as I turn over to him, that's the war we're in right now. The other side isn't fucking stupid. Yeah. They are playing this very intentionally. They want to see these things happen. But what I am also saying is that doesn't mean that you can't prepare right now, mentally, physically. You don't have a lot of time, in my humble opinion. I mean, I hope 30 days from now, we're having a completely different style conversation. Well, we already know, even no matter who wins, that's not going to be the case. So, I mean, maybe a year from now, we're having another conversation. We can be sitting and talking about the joys of canning food again. I mean, Clint and I were talking about doing, non-personal communications, and just giving an example of how you need to start learning how to talk with your buddies, where you can do it openly. And when Big Brother's listening, they just think you were just having a conversation about your day, but you actually communicated stuff. That literally is where we are. The chair is against the fucking wall.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the big things that we all need to realize too is, and I know this is an old cliche, but the world is a stage. They're putting a show on right now. Don't become one of their extras. Don't be part of the show. Sit back, observe. All right, but be aware of what's going on, and don't fall into those tricks. And because this is very much so a war for your mind. This is where it takes place. I know a lot of people said for a long time, Uncle Alex Jones is pretty crazy. And yeah, he is pretty crazy, but man, oh man, he called it being a war for your mind decades ago. And that's the thing, is this really is a big psychological operation. So cut your strings. Don't be part of it. And, just keep watching though. because it's how we can be aware and we can try to roll with the punches, because that's what we got to do. Because you hit it on the head. They want us, and I mean the proverbial us, the people, okay, the 7 billion of us that live on this planet together. They want us to make the first move. They don't want to start this fight, all right, because they want to try to come out and let the history books show that they were the righteous conquerors that put down this evil threat. You know, I mean, I can only imagine if this
or democracy.
Yeah, democracy. We've never been a democracy. That's such a joke. But that's the thing. Imagine, you know, if they actually get a real event, how it will be painted in history if they can control the narrative. Because look at what they're already trying to do with January 6th. Yeah, there was some issues at the Capitol, but they're already trying to make it look like it was the worst thing that's ever happened. You can only imagine in 20, 30 years, if they're writing the history books, how bad that event is, how hundreds of thousands of people died on the Capitol lawn. You know, I mean, that's the level that this totalitarian government can go. You know, Norm Macdonald, one of my favorite comedians in history. Love the guy. He has a great quote. He goes, "Hey, I just read the history books and I got good news. The good guys always win." You know, I mean, that guy was brilliant. He could say things you can't say, and he could say it in such a way that you had to kind of think about it a little bit.
Hey, you know who was another great kind of comedian like that? Just on a weird, small little note is and I've been watching a lot more of his recently is George Carlin.
Mm-hmm.
George Carlin was calling it a spade way back in the day too. Yeah. You know, I grew up as a kid thinking George Carlin was like, you know, big flaming crazy lefty. That motherfucker was all about freedom and George Carlin.
He was an absolute true freedom of speech absolutist.
Yeah,
Carlin was. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of him himself, but man, he was on spot on a lot of stuff. And that's the thing is, comedy is one of the last tools, one of the last weapons against a totalitarian government. And when comedy dies, and you can't speak honestly, because the jester was always the one that was supposed to be able to mock the king and not lose his head over it, right? Because someone has to keep the king humble, all right? When comedy dies, which it's pretty much on its last life right now. You see what's past is comedy nowadays. When comedy dies, man, we're in for a world of trouble. And we're seeing it right now across the board with everything, man. This game's playing for keeps. And we're not in the equation on the backside.
All right, Clint, before we turn it over to you, I just got a quick question.
Yep.
Do our beards make you jealous or you're like, you know, I mean, you were in 18 series, you know, but like, do you like look at us and say, God damn, those are pretty manly beards? I mean, or you just say we're a bunch of retards? What do you say? What do you think?
The latter.
Yeah, no, I don't have any desire to do the beard thing. I mean, I like it. There's a lot of people out there that are into that, but I do the opposite.
Nice and clean.
All right. Well said. All right, brother. No, we're
because if they see you walking down the street, they'll go, "That's not an SF guy."
What, being clean shaven? That's what they would say. Yeah. See, that's exactly how that pendulum works. You know, way back in the day, dudes wearing beards, like, come on, man, give it up. You know, what are you trying to do, right? You know, it's like the Afghanis didn't welcome you into their village because you have a beard. You know, like they just think you're a crazy white guy with a beard. You know, come on, man, you're not a village elder. But
go the other way too, though. If I shave mine off, I wouldn't even recognize myself. So,
yeah, let me tell you, I've had one, but that's like exactly that's my way to stay gray.
Right on.
Stay a gray guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you got? We're at an hour. Where do you want to go with it? I don't even like. I intend. I know you and I talked the other day, and I had an intent to really talk a little bit more of the actual direct action, the DA side of unconventional warfare that I really do think that we're going to start seeing here in the next 30 days. Do you want to hit on that, or do we just save that for? Because Blake, if I understand you right, if you don't get attacked by the Poochie Poo, but we're going to do one more episode like this, and that'll be next week. And then we're making a decision on what we're going to do here because we're just going to be so close to the wire. And I think we're going to have to do some hands-on things. Nothing huge, nothing major, but just here's some medical stuff. Here's some gun stuff. That's what we're thinking of doing, kind of for majority of October. So we're going to do one more episode like this. So on that note, what do you want to do, Clint? I mean, do you want to talk a little bit more of the direct action aspect of what we're probably going to see here in the next 30 days? Or do we want to save that maybe for another time? That was my long-winded way of getting back to that.
Yeah, I'll speak from my position right now. I'm down in the southeast of the United States right now. Ended up down here because retiring from the military here, but I'm actually from Wyoming and the South Dakota area, so I'm real partial to that. I like being up in those. You got Wyoming with 500,000 people total, and you got Denver, Colorado with 5 million people. I like those areas where it's a little more sparse. I like the mountains, so that's where I want to be. And I'm constantly, they've put us in a position right now where I own a home, and it's like I got a great interest rate on my house, but I don't want to lose that when they've got everything so out of balance to where inflation is out of control, houses are overpriced. So I'm kind of staying put right now, but I'd rather be in a different area. People think, what am I going to do? Run for the hills, or am I going to, bug in, bug out? There's all these, thoughts. There's a lot of people that the survivalist, prepper, prepared, whatever word you want to use for it. I've got skills. A lot of people got skills. I just feel like staying put right now. I will bug in because what in my thoughts, when you start looking at them really disrupting things, you just don't want to be around one of the major metropolitan areas, and people that are, man, I'm getting out of there. But it's that big spider with all the baby spiders all over its abdomen. You touch it and they run everywhere. So you want to stay away from those places or get away from it quick. And that's going to happen. So the further away you are, the better, in my opinion. I'm not in a big city like that. So I'm medium-sized city. So for me, when we're talking about preparation, watching what's going on, there's really nowhere to go. We're going to have to ride this out and see what this metastasized evil looks like when they start to break down the system. And that's what they want. They want to break down the system. This divide and conquer has been going on for a while. And the psychological operations of divide and conquer, pitting everybody against each other to where they can run to the bank and we're mad at each other over skin melana or religion or stupid stuff, So, I mean, that's what's going on. So that I think for me, I guess where you were asking me, when you talk about direct action, are you talking about going out and foraging? Are you taking care of your family? Trying to keep your neighborhood secure? So I know all my neighbors around here, if I have to, and we're like, hey, we need to lock down this little sector right here so we can keep all of our close, little residents here kind of safe until this thing subsides. You can't get away from it. I've been in a country when the system starts to collapse and there is nowhere to go. There are armed bands of militia running down the road, chasing the police. I've been there, and it's very unsettling when the best place that you got to go is the Marine house, the Marine safe house. That's where you got to go, and so you just have to have a plan. That's what these series have been about. Shoot, move, communicate, be prepared, have a plan, know what you're going to do, and take care of yours. I don't know. I guess I hope I answered it, Mark, but that's my thoughts.
No, you did. I was talking in the direct action from the aspect of the UW because I guess I'll just make another prediction. I think before October's over, everybody talks about the October surprise. I'm going to give it, 2 to 3 weeks, and we're going to have multiple October surprises, but it's going to be in the form of UWDA direct action. We're going to start seeing some terrorist activity. We're going to see more of what we're seeing in some of the cities where foreign, gangs of illegal immigrants are taking over, communities and blocks. And we're probably going to see some police killings as another example, or, some civilians or things. So I was talking more using your unconventional warfare, your infiltrators, and start having them just ratchet it up with a little bit more of direct action type of operations is what I was kind of getting at.
I see where you're going with that now. You got something, Blake?
Well, I was just going to say, Mark, I think, if we're going to kind of continue talking about this point next week, I think then that should be our focus next week, because we really focus heavily on PSYOPs, We focus heavily on the different 1,000 needles that are cutting us right now, sort of situation. And I do think, we're gonna see that direct action taking place. What we didn't even talk about the events taking in place in the Levant right now, and they're monumental. And I mean, and then that's the thing. Or we didn't even talk about the cities breaking into gang warfare and being unregulated by the police because they're outgunned and want nothing to do with it. Like, we are seeing these localized clans level warfare breaking out across our cities right now. And we are seeing the old, call me a jerk for saying it, but it's the truth, desert tribes going back at their throats with each other again.
From a UW perspective, that direct action doesn't have to be 9 badass Muldoons with night vision kicking in your door. It can be exactly what you're saying, and that's why I wanted to get Clint's comment on that.
Tire fires and Kalashnikovs.
Yeah, I didn't understand exactly the way you were prefacing it, but I get what you're saying now. The direct action, all these demographics that have come across the border that are now infiltrated into places that it's so easy. You can see taking down a power relay station with some double-aught buck. Oh. You go in there with the shotgun. You know where to shoot. You can shut down the whole area, and who knows when that's going to be back up and running. So
that is other cities.
Conventional warfare. But then when we start talking about, you're saying direct action with these, gangs, Venezuelan gangs that are in here, and any other. Unconventional warfare people have been sent in here to disrupt, which is just going to heighten everybody's tensions, and they're going to think it's you and you're going to think it's them, but it's they're just kicking the beehive.
And that's what so maybe saying DA direct action was because, it doesn't have to be kinetic. And I think that's where my brain is. I'm more in line with Blake. I don't think we're necessarily what we're about to experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be kinetic in nature. To your point, Clint, it's finding other agents of chaos in your grander UW scheme and getting that and creating that chaos. Because if you can just get 2 people to doubt or question or not to distrust each other in the upcoming, chaos, that's maybe good. That's maybe enough, because that buys you another week before people pull their heads out of their asses. And then it's all over, and all the voting machines and FBI and CISA and all that stuff. And the next thing you know, you've got enough votes, and then you just won the election. That's what I'm just trying to say. I just don't see how we're not going to see some uptick in some type of, and again, just not making an excuse. I am saying direct action. I think there is going to be violence. But events like that, that's what I'm getting at. And I'll shut up and let you guys kind of take it.
And it's going to happen. It's going to happen either way.
Yes.
It's going to happen. The fork's going to happen. We're going this way, that way. And it's going to happen either way.
Yeah.
Because they have successfully, incredibly divided this country right down the center. It's not 30-70. It's not 20-80. It's almost right down the center. Mm-hmm. So you have, basically peer on peer. A peer thing. So you have 2 sides that are going to be equally angry.
And I think that's one of the biggest things too is don't fall for it. You don't have to pick a frickin' side. Exactly. Like, the logical side is not going to those 2 extremes. And we have to have those voices in the middle, or we'll never draw everybody back from the brink. And the thing is if you look at it from the power that be these multiple different factions that sit upon this ruling body, commonly known as the elites, even though there's nothing elite about them. All right. If they look at this as we are a vermin, we are a problem to be eliminated. Well, why would you directly fight them when you can have the 2 sides fight each other and take care of the problem? And you can just sit back and go, no problem. This is the thing. We can't fall for this trap. They want us to kill each other.
Yes.
Like, that's their goal here.
Yeah.
So Clint, on that note,
that better.
Well, I'm sorry, I was talking over you. Go ahead, say that again.
Oh, it was just what Blake just said. I couldn't say that any better. That's exactly what they want. They want to do.
Okay, how about this, boys? We're at an hour and 15. How about we wrap it up, and then Clint, not to put you on the spot, we can talk about it afterwards in the AAR. But Blake, and again, we're just kind of making this up on the go, boys and girls. And so Blake, maybe this is what we do for next week, is we talk a little bit more. Again, it does direct action in my mind doesn't necessarily mean like, kinetic, but we continue this conversation for an hour next week. And I hate to say it, we're probably going to have, and we didn't even talk about the attempted assassinations of Trump. We didn't even go down this road. And there's so much of this evidence. Again, that's what leads me to believe we're really fucked right now. What do you think? So I want to see if Clint can come back on next week, but Blake, first, you want to go in that direction for next week? I just kind of make an audible right now.
I think focusing on the direct action aspect is the right move because, like I said, we talked about the psychological side of it. We talked about what is already behind us. I think because the direct action is more of a forecasting of what's around the corner. Like Clint said earlier, it's like we're waiting for that thing that's just right around the corner. We don't know what it is yet, but it's going to pop us right in the face. All right. It's what is that thing that's right around that corner? And I think trying to, because really that's going to be us playing, let's be honest, playing armchair quarterback or general or whatever you want to call it. It's us really kind of looking into our crystal ball and going, here's all the parts at play. Here's the pieces of the puzzle we have, but what's coming next? And I personally think that if I was a foreign power or a quote unquote domestic parasite that was trying to upend the current system, the zeitgeist that we live in, I would be looking at things like splinter teams running around the countries and taking out power infrastructure, taking out water plants and waterworks infrastructure, hitting railroads. I mean, now I bring this up because I just watched it last night. It's been a long time, but it's almost off of Amazon Prime too, but Lawrence of Arabia. And the back half of that movie where Lawrence it's hit and run tactics. It's blowing up the Turks' lines. It's guerrilla warfare. Well, these things can be done in the modern day, but with new technologies that they couldn't have fathomed in the Great War. And that's the thing is now we have electronic countermeasures. We have electronic attack weapons. We have all sorts of different drone apparatus that can be used. We have chemical warfare. And all of this can be done, unfortunately, with a very small group of people with a little bit of intuitive nature on how to do these sorts of things, which means that if you are that power that be, you can prop up these small little groups, just set them loose, and chaos they create's chaos that benefits you. So what does that chaos look like? What are those targets? What does it unfold like? Is it gang warfare? Is it sabotage teams? Is it poisoning of our food networks? I mean, which arguably our food's poison anyway, but that's a conversation for another time.
Clint.
Yeah, I'll kind of expand on that a little bit. At least with people that are prepared and they want to learn certain skills, at least within the military, you're constantly trying to, whether you're a combat arms, Ranger, Special Forces, Navy SEAL, all the other, services, they're tempering that steel. They're constantly hitting on it, trying to make it hard. And they're building a mindset. They're building that mindset that, you have confidence in your skills, you have confidence in yourself, and you're doing things that are morally with a moral compass. And we always need to keep that in mind that we're the good guys. Yep. We're the ones that are sitting back watching. They can sit there and play their games. And when we're informed and we're confident and we're not fearful, we're ready for that decisive point, and that is when it gets ready to break out. And you're doing it for the right reasons. You're doing things for the right reasons. I look back at the founding fathers and what they sacrificed, the people that signed, our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. Those people gave up a lot, and we haven't had to do that in a very long time, or at least a large segment of the military or population has not. So, pull people up under your wings, teach them. I have people calling me right now, asking me questions about things. What should I be, putting away? How should I set this up? What should I be doing with this? And, I know the people that are around me, and those are the people that I share my knowledge with. And those are the people under my, within my span of control, my group. So
building that plan, build that tribe.
Yeah. And like I said, we sit back. It's going to happen both ways, either way. You just got to be ready for something. Yeah.
Well, I just seriously, and thanks for coming on and sharing. And and again, we'll talk offline. I hope we can get you on next week and continue this and kind of put a bow in this. I hate to say bow, but put a bow in this conversation. But Blake, I'm just going to make one more comment. I'm going to turn it to you for your final comments and outro. But boys and girls, you know, I hope we're all laughing at me. Come December, you know, Christmas or something later this year, I hope we're all making fun of Mark. I really do. But if not, you better listen to what Clint just said right there. I mean, you better take that shit to heart.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope I hope we're all wrong.
Yeah. I don't want to be right about this one.
All right, Blake, give us final comments and take us out, brother.
Well, you know, I mean, like we talked about earlier, we don't want this to be a black pill. This is I think, although we did kind of verge into the line of speculation and conspiracy at times, I think this was a relatively sober look at trying to see what's been going on, what's happened, and going, how can we predict what's happening in the future? And like we've talked about, it doesn't matter who gets in this next election cycle when we're talking about the United States specifically. There will be violence. You know, I'm not condoning it. I think it's terrible, but there will be some level. We'll have another summer of love, or we'll have another random bricks showing up in major cities, or the gang wars really will break out and the rule of law will break down. And next thing you know, it's Mega City 1. You know, but it's sorry, Mark, sorry, not supposed to make you laugh right now. But anyway, you know, I think that any of us with eyes to see, ears to hear, and a level of trying to be honest with yourself and some introspective looking can see what's the writings on the wall, that this is not good. All right. That at the very least, we are going to be facing some very hard times. Don't necessarily know what those hard times are, but I do think it's a very honest thing to say that they are here already and they're only going to get worse. With that being said, I'm going to kind of bring up the other thing I said is don't become one of their extras. Don't play their game. Don't pick one side or the other. Try to use your mind. The reason that we are here with thousands of history and generations of men and women behind you is because the last generation did a little better than the generation before and tried to move that ball forward. So let's try to keep moving that ball forward. And if it means we've got to switch up what we're doing and go a little more insular and bring together and under the wings, like Clint said, of people that we know and we love, and try to grow these smaller communities because we think maybe, hey, it's going to be so bad that we need to have little seed pods all around the world ready to jumpstart civilization again, or try to go back to these our core founding principles that were preordained and were not given by man, then so be it. But let's at least try to have a little bit of a backup plan. So I don't want this whole thing to be a negative note, because I don't think it is. I think it's a very sober look at what's coming. And I think that with that coming, it has the potential to unlock greatness in a lot of us. And I think it just takes us stepping up to that challenge. So I don't really have any more to say other than thanks for listening to us drone on about this stuff.
Clint, sir?
Nope, I definitely, as I've told you, Mark and Blake, you know, I enjoy coming on and talking with you guys about some of these subjects. I'm always game to come back on and just stuff and talk about things that are thought-provoking, make people think. And I guess that's my biggest thing. I had some experiences today that made me reflect on being measured in your delivery, you know, how you say things to people. You know, that right there, you can bring down the temperature by your attitude and how you talk to people, you know, very important. So this being able to do this, come in here and share our thoughts, what we think, you know, and have people share that with us. That's why I love being on here with you guys. I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you.
Well, you know, we love having you on here, and I just so happy to have had the opportunity to really start getting to know you. You know, even though we've met each other a long time ago, but not in the same kind of way. But so just thanks, you know, and everybody hats off, you know, Clint. It's not that he needs to get paid, but Clint ain't getting paid to be here. He's taking the time away from his family and the shit he's got to do. And even if I think I'm right, that doesn't mean you just stop doing all the shit you need to do every day for the next 30 days. Life isn't going to slow down because you think it's, you know, getting crazy. You still got to do dishes and service your vehicle and all. Take your kids to sports, and all that shit doesn't wait for you, you know. So you've got a lot of rocks in your rucksack right now. That's what I'm saying. That's my final comment right there, Blake. Clint, final, and then otherwise, Blake, you take us on out. Let's give Clint one last little shout out. Something snake eater. Give us some good snake eater kind of commentary there, sir.
I don't know. I think I pretty much had my last couple thoughts there. You know, like I said, I enjoy being an asset. You know, and every day you got to bring those skills, learn something that brings it. You know, I'm an asset to my family. And I'm an asset to you guys being on here and the people that want to come on here and challenge thought. You know, I want my kids to question everything. Lord knows I was a rebel when I was a teenager, you know, and I questioned authority, and it's served me well.
Amen.
Amen to that. Right. I'll actually take that up. I like that a lot. Like we talked about, hone your language. It's the best tool you have in your sack, man. It is the most important one, and it's the one that's going to win the hearts and minds and build the bridges that we so desperately need to see through this storm that we are in. You know, build your tribe, build your clan, maybe check inventory, do what you can, and take a little step forward every single day. Don't look at what's behind you because it's behind you. There's nothing we can do about that. We can look forward to the bright future for our children and our children's children. Let's not let the torch of liberty and civilization fall to the wayside to totalitarian despots that want your mind and your soul and your heart and want every little ounce that you possibly will give them. We are free men at the end of the day. And I know one thing for damn sure, that I'd rather die with my boots on than live on my knees.
Amen. Next week, that's probably going to be the title then, right around the corner, because we're going to talk about that more kinetic or direct action. You know, what is really right around the corner? And hey, just remember this episode and let's just see how much more has transpired in the 7 days to prove our point. I would love to see the next 7 days prove us totally wrong.
Yeah.
Yep.
Blake, I spoke over you. Say again.
No, I was going to say, hopefully nothing at all. Like, I hope it's just 7 days apiece, man. But I'm guessing there's probably a dozen more things we can talk about.
All right.
I mean,
there's entirely too many people making these calls and they keep happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, God bless everyone. We'll see you next week.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. Big hats off to Clint one more time from Nemesis Camo. Woo! And George, his buddy behind his shoulder. And we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah.
See you guys.
All right, guys.
Later, guys.